Black Templars, Warhammer's most fanatical Marines. Every Space Marine chapter has rules. The Black Templars burned theirs. The Codex Astartes says 1,000 warriors per chapter. 1,000. Carefully counted, carefully controlled, carefully watched. That decree exists because the last time Space Marines gathered in larger numbers, they nearly destroyed everything humanity had built. The Horus heresy taught the Imperium a brutal lesson about unchecked power. The Black Templars looked at that lesson and decided it didn't apply to them. Nobody knows how many Black Templars exist. 5,000, 8,000, 10,000. The High Marshal himself couldn't tell you if you held a bolter to his head. And that's not incompetence. That's design. That's doctrine. That's a chapter hiding an army in plain sight across hundreds of crusade fleets scattered throughout the galaxy, each one waging its own holy war, each one recruiting its own warriors, each one answering to no authority except faith itself. They've been crusading for 10,000 years. They have never stopped to count. They have never stopped to rest. They have never stopped. The Black Templars represent something dangerous within the Imperium, something that makes Inquisitors nervous and other chapters uncomfortable. They don't defend worlds. They conquer them. They don't negotiate with enemies. They purge them. They don't maintain fortresses or home worlds, or anything that might anchor them to a single place. Their monastery is their fleet. Their territory is wherever they're currently killing. Look at a Black Templar, and you see everything you need to know about what they are. Matte black armor scarred by desert sand, and plasma burns, and 10,000 battlefields. No gleaming blue like the Ultramarines. No savage red like the Blood Angels. Black. The color of zealotry, the color of absolute conviction. The winged skull of the Imperium blazoned across their chest isn't heraldry. It's a declaration. It's a promise. It's a threat. They were born from the Imperial fists in the aftermath of the Horus heresy, when the Imperium demanded its Space Marine legions divide into smaller, controllable chapters. Their founder was Sigismund, first captain of the Imperial Fists, the finest swordsman among all Space Marines, a warrior whose blade had never known defeat, and a man whose faith in the Emperor as a god had been his secret shame until the moment it became his only truth. Sigismund took the most fanatical warriors he could find, the ones who prayed between kills, the ones who saw battle as worship, the ones whose devotion bordered on madness. He forged them into something that was supposed to be just another chapter, but became something else entirely. Something that treats the Codex Astartes as a suggestion they've politely declined for 10 millennia. The Inquisition has destroyed chapters for lesser deviations. They've declared entire brotherhoods excommunicate traitorous for questioning imperial doctrine. But the Black Templars get to exist. They get to grow. They get to maintain forces that would trigger immediate investigation if any other chapter tried it. Why? Because the Black Templars are useful. Because they throw themselves at enemies, other chapters hesitate to engage. Because their eternal crusade means they're always fighting, always advancing, always killing. And the Imperium desperately needs warriors who will never stop. But there's another reason. A darker one. The Black Templars worship the Emperor as a god, with a fervor that makes the ecclesiarchy look moderate. They've built a religion on his unwilling corpse. They've become exactly what he never wanted his Space Marines to be. And somewhere in that contradiction lies the truth of what the Black Templars really are. They are humanity's most loyal servants. They are the Emperor's greatest disappointment. They are faith weaponized into an unstoppable force that cannot be controlled, cannot be contained, and cannot be stopped. No pity, no remorse, no fear. To understand the Black Templars, You have to stand on the walls of the Imperial Palace during the Siege of Terra. You have to witness the moment their founder, Sigismund, was broken and remade in fire. Before the traitors came, Sigismund was a legend. First captain of the Imperial Fists, the finest duelist in all the Space Marine legions, a warrior whose personal combat record was flawless. But beneath the stoic, dutiful exterior of an Imperial Fist, he harbored a secret shame. He believed the Emperor was a god. In an age of enforced imperial truth, an age of science and reason that rejected all divinity, Sigismund had secretly embraced the words of the Lectitio Divinitatus. He kept his faith hidden like a poison until the day it cost him everything. The moment of his fall wasn't on a battlefield. It was in a cold, stone chamber, facing his own Primarch, Rogel Dorn. Sigismund had sought out a mystic, a prophetess, and received a vision warning of Horus's betrayal. It was a warning that proved horrifyingly accurate. When Dorn discovered this, he didn't reward his son's foresight. He punished his lack of faith in cold, hard reason. In Dorn's eyes, consulting a psyker was a weakness, a superstition unworthy of an Astartes. In front of the legion's assembled command, Dorn stripped Sigismund of his most sacred title, the Emperor's champion. He would not stand at the Emperor's side. He would not be the final wall against the arch-traitor. The rejection didn't just wound Sigismund, it shattered him. And from those shards, something far more dangerous was forged. Cast out from his father's grace, Sigismund's shame curdled into a righteous, incandescent fury. During the siege, he took command of the Templar Brethren, the legion's most zealous warriors, and led them on sorties beyond the palace walls. These were not defensive maneuvers. They were punitive crusades. They were acts of violent prayer. Amidst the burning ruins of the Eternity Wall spaceport, Sigismund's new purpose was given its voice. He faced Captain Karn of the World Eaters, a berserker already touched by the favor of the Blood God. The two dueled amidst a hurricane of fire and death. Karn, laughing, demanded to know what could possibly drive a loyalist to such heights of fury. Sigismund's answer would become the eternal creed of his future chapter. He raised his blade and declared, "I am judgment. I am punishment." He fought Karn to a standstill, not through demonic blessing, but through sheer, perfected skill and an absolute conviction that burned hotter than any warp fire. Throughout the long, grinding siege, Sigismund personally hunted and slew dozens of traitor champions. Each kill was an offering. Each life taken was an act of devotion to the god he was denied the honor of defending. By the time the traitor legions finally broke and fled, Sigismund was no longer the disgraced captain. He was the Emperor's truest sword, a warrior whose faith had been tested in the crucible of total war and emerged stronger than ceramite. His shame had become his only truth. When Rogel Dorn looked upon his son again, he saw what he had created. He saw a living weapon of belief, a fire that could no longer be contained or reformed. He could only point it at the enemies of mankind. When the legions were ordered to break into smaller chapters, Dorn gave Sigismund his blessing to forge a new brotherhood, one bound not by territory or a homeworld, but by a perpetual, unending crusade. The warrior who was denied the honor of standing beside the Emperor at the final battle swore that his sons would never stop fighting, never stop crusading, and never stop killing in his name. 10,000 years later, that vow remains unbroken. The Codex Astartes is explicit. No Space Marine. Chapter may exceed 1,000 battle brothers. This restriction exists for one reason. The Horus heresy proved, in blood and fire, what happens when any single commander is allowed to accumulate unchecked power. Legions of tens of thousands of Astartes had burned half the galaxy and nearly strangled the Imperium in its cradle. Never again. It is the most sacred foundational rule of chapter organization. The Black Templars currently field somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 active warriors. No one knows the exact number. Not the High Lords of Terra, not the Inquisition, not even the Black Templars themselves. This is not an accident. This is doctrinal. The brilliant, infuriating legal fiction that allows the Black Templars to maintain an army that would see any other chapter branded as traitors lies in their crusade structure. They do not operate as a single, consolidated chapter with 10 countable companies. Instead, the Black Templars exist as dozens, perhaps hundreds, of independent crusade fleets scattered across the entire galaxy. Each crusade is a self-contained army. Each has its own ships, its own command structure, its own recruiting worlds, and its own designated theater of war. When an inquisitor demands a head count, the High Marshal can, with a straight face, claim ignorance. Because by the time a census is completed for one crusade fleet in the Segmentum Solar, 3 other crusades on the Eastern Fringe have recruited fresh neophytes. 2 in the Segmentum Pacificus have suffered grievous casualties, and another in the galactic north has splintered into 5 smaller strike forces to pursue new targets. The Eternal Crusade isn't just an ideology, it's administrative camouflage on a galactic scale. The internal hierarchy of a crusade fleet reveals how this impossibly vast organization maintains cohesion. At the very apex is the High Marshal, the supreme commander of all Black Templars, though his authority over a crusade 10 years' journey away is often more spiritual than practical. Below him serve the marshals, each commanding a major crusade. Beneath them are castellans, leading the individual fighting companies that form the crusade's mailed fist. But the true foundation of the chapter, the thing that makes it all work, is the relationship between the initiate and the neophyte. Where other chapters herd their aspirants into collective scout companies for training, a Black Templar neophyte is assigned to a single, specific initiate. He becomes that warrior's apprentice, his armsman, his ward. The relationship is intensely personal. The neophyte learns to fight by watching his master. He maintains his master's war gear. He fights alongside his master in battle, and very often, he dies protecting his master. This forges bonds of loyalty that are far more powerful than any formal rank structure. The psychological impact of this endless war cannot be overstated. A typical Space Marine deploys, fights a campaign, and returns to a fortress monastery to rest and recuperate. A Black Templar has no concept of peace. He has no memory of a homeworld. His only home is the cold deck of a crusade ship. His existence is a relentless cycle of advance, conquer, leave a small garrison, and advance again. For a Black Templar, meditation isn't silent contemplation, it's the rhythmic cleaning of a chainsword's teeth. Rest isn't sleep, it's studying schematics of enemy fortifications. Every moment between battles is merely preparation for the next. This creates warriors of horrifying aggression, but also surprising adaptability. Without a codex to dictate proper deployment or acceptable losses, a Black Templar marshal wages war according to the demands of the moment. This very structure, however, creates its own friction. When 2 crusade fleets converge on the same war zone, disputes over glory, resources, or strategic priority can become venomous. There are records of marshals bringing their flagships to weapon lock over who had the right to lead the final glorious assault. The High Marshal's authority is meant to resolve these conflicts, but when he is 1,000 light-years away, his word is just a whisper in the void. In the end, what holds the Black Templars together isn't a hierarchy, it's faith. The absolute, unshakable conviction that any Black Templar on any ship in any corner of the galaxy is serving the same divine emperor and is willing to die for him, On the eve of battle, as the crusade fleet hangs silent in the void above a doomed world, a phenomenon occurs. It cannot be explained by apothecaries, and it cannot be quantified by tech priests. A single warrior, kneeling in prayer or sharpening his blade, will receive a vision. It is blinding, absolute, and undeniable. He sees the face of the enemy commander he must slay. He sees his own death, and he sees the Emperor's victory. When dawn breaks, that warrior is no longer just a battle brother. He has become the Emperor's champion. The transformation is both physical and spiritual. He is brought before the reclusium, where chaplains anoint him with sacred oils. He dons the armor of faith, ancient black plate trimmed with gold, its surfaces covered in litanies of hate and devotion. Over this, he wears a pure white tabard, emblazoned with the heraldry of his specific crusade. He relinquishes his bolter and takes up the black sword, a master-crafted power weapon consecrated with the blood of 1,000 martyrs. In that moment, he abandons his squad, his rank, and his personal name. For the duration of the battle, he is no longer a space marine fighting for a tactical objective. He is the Emperor's wrath given physical form. The Emperor's champion fights without strategy or self-preservation. He moves with a singular, terrifying purpose, charging directly toward the greatest threat on the battlefield, whatever his vision revealed, as his ordained target. Squad cohesion means nothing. Covering fire is irrelevant. The vision demands a specific death, and the champion will deliver it or die in the attempt. The most famous account of this holy possession occurred during the Declates Crusade. The vision fell upon Initiate Bayard, one of the newest warriors in the entire crusade. His marshal was filled with doubt. How could the Emperor anoint an unproven fighter for such a sacred duty? But Bayard's vision was unshakable and specific. He would face and slay the orc war boss Gorgrim Skull Crucia, a monstrous beast who had personally killed 3 previous champions in single combat. As the assault began, Bayard walked through the orc horde like an angel of death. Bolter rounds ricocheted from his armor. Crude chappas glanced off his tabard. He sustained wounds that would have felled any other warrior, yet he did not slow. When he finally reached Gorgrim, the war boss, a creature who had never known fear, hesitated. There was something profoundly wrong about this one human. Something that made Gorgrim's primitive psychic senses scream in abject terror. The duel lasted less than a minute. Bayard's black sword was a blur of righteous fury, and on the 4th stroke, it removed Gorgrim's massive head from his shoulders. As the greenskin horde broke in confusion, Bayard collapsed, his body finally acknowledging the 17 mortal wounds he had sustained during his relentless advance. He died on the blood-soaked ground, a faint smile on his lips, his vision fulfilled. The theological implications of the Emperor's champion are profound and deeply troubling to the wider Imperium. If the Emperor truly sends these visions, it suggests his consciousness is not only active, but can reach across the galaxy to touch the minds of individual warriors. This directly contradicts the official imperial creed, which holds that the Emperor is sustained, but not aware. The Black Templars don't care about official positions. For them, the champion is proof of everything they believe. The Emperor is a god. He does watch over his faithful, and those who serve him with absolute, unquestioning devotion will receive his blessing when they need it most. Inquisitors who have suggested alternative theories, that the visions are mere psychic flashes or stress-induced hallucinations, have found themselves on the wrong end of a Black Templar's blade. No warrior seeks the vision. It chooses him. To fake or force such a holy experience is the gravest heresy imaginable. And when a true champion emerges, his brothers do not celebrate. They mourn, because they know, with chilling certainty, that he will not survive the coming battle. The vision shows victory, but it also shows the price. Every emperor's champion in the chapter's 10,000-year history has died in battle. Every single one. They achieve their purpose, fulfill their holy mandate, and fall. This is not tragedy. To the Black Templars, this is the highest possible honor. To serve so completely that the Emperor himself acknowledges your devotion and grants you the gift of a truly meaningful death. Every Space Marine chapter maintains librarians, warriors, whose psychic abilities provide battlefield intelligence, warp-based weaponry, and defense against demonic incursion. The Librarius represents one of the most valuable assets any chapter possesses, a core of warrior mystics who can turn the tide of a battle with a thought. The Black Templars have none. 0 librarians, a complete and utter rejection of psychic powers within their ranks. Any aspirant who demonstrates the slightest flicker of psychic potential is immediately and violently expelled, or, in many cases, simply executed. This policy has remained an ironclad law for 10,000 years, and it represents the Black Templars' most controversial and dangerous deviation from standard Astartes doctrine. The origins of this holy hatred trace directly to the fires of the Horus heresy. The Templars witnessed firsthand as trusted librarians fell to chaos possession. They watched sorcerers tear reality asunder, turning loyal battle brothers into screaming conduits for demonic invasion. They saw the unimaginable horrors that emerged when the power of the warp touched the minds of mortals. Sigismund's conclusion was absolute and unforgiving. Psychic power was a gateway to damnation, a fundamental corruption too dangerous to permit within his chapter. The risk of a single psyker falling to chaos outweighed any tactical advantage 1,000 could provide. Over subsequent millennia, this pragmatic fear evolved into fervent religious doctrine. Black Templar chaplains preach that the psyker's mind is an open wound in reality, a bleeding doorway through which the horrors of the Imperium constantly seek entry. Only the Emperor himself, they argue, possessed the divine strength to wield such power safely. He did not merely touch the warp, he commanded it. For any mortal, even a transhuman Astartes, to channel the energies of the Imperium is to invite ruin, to mimic divine power with flawed, mortal hands. This creates profound and bloody tension in practical situations. When Black Templars face enemy sorcerers or demons, they cannot counter warpcraft with warpcraft. Their solution is characteristically direct. Kill the witch before it can finish its incantation. Entire doctrines of Black Templar combat are built around rapid, overwhelming assault tactics specifically designed to close distance with enemy psykers and silence them with the brutal, physical application of a chainsword to the face. The Inquisition has repeatedly and furiously questioned this policy. During the Vinculus Crusade, an Inquisitor lord named Halleck formally demanded that High Marshal Cordhill accept a contingent of seconded Grey Knights, the Emperor's own demon-hunting chapter of elite psykers, for a campaign against a powerful Tzeentchian cult. Cordhill's response was delivered without hesitation. He presented Halleck with a simple choice: withdraw the demand and his Witch Marines immediately, or be declared an enemy of the crusade and be purged alongside the heretics. Halleck, staring into the dead lenses of a warrior who clearly meant it, withdrew. The campaign proceeded. The Black Templars suffered over 40% casualties overcoming psychic defenses that a handful of librarians could have neutralized in moments. They considered those casualties an acceptable price for purity. This visceral hatred infects every aspect of a Black Templar's worldview. They see all psykers as fundamentally tainted, not necessarily evil by choice, but contaminated by their very nature. This extends to their view of the Imperium's vital navigator houses, the astropaths who enable interstellar communication, and even, uncomfortably, to the Emperor himself. The cognitive dissonance of worshipping a being who is the most powerful psyker in human history, while despising all lesser psykers, requires theological gymnastics that their chaplains perform with zealous conviction. This belief manifests in shocking battlefield behaviors. A Black Templar squad will abandon an advantageous firing position and charge across open ground, ignoring heavy weapons and strategic threats, to kill a single enemy psyker. The hatred isn't rational, it's not tactical, it's religious. They cannot benefit from psychic healing, receive warp-enhanced intelligence, or establish telepathic contact during a communications blackout. To them, this is not weakness, it is purity. In a galaxy where chaos corrupts everything it touches, the Black Templars maintain a chapter spiritually untainted by the warp's direct influence. Their minds are closed, their souls are shielded, their hatred is their armor. When the Third War for Armageddon erupted in 998, M41, the Imperium trembled. The greatest orc Wah in millennia, led by the apocalyptic prophet beast Gazgkul Thraka, descended upon the vital hive world. In response, the Black Templars dispatched multiple crusade fleets. Among them was the force led by Reclusiarch Grimaldus, a chaplain whose faith had been tested by tragedy and forged into something terrible and unyielding. Grimaldus arrived at Hive Hellsreach with just 100 Black Templars. His orders were simple: defend the Hive. His interpretation was characteristically Black Templar: die defending the Hive if necessary, but make the enemy pay for every single meter of ground in an ocean of their own blood. The civilian population of Hellsreach initially viewed their saviors with undisguised terror. These were not the noble, gleaming Ultramarines of propaganda-picked casts, or the heroic, boisterous space wolves of children's tales. These were towering, silent fanatics in scarred black armor, who spoke only of holy slaughter and divine judgment. Dock workers, hive gangers, and militia conscripts watched the Astartes establish defensive positions, their dead-lensed helms scanning the horizon, and wondered if the cure might be worse than the disease. The first orc assault changed everything. When the green tide crashed against Hellsreach's outer walls, the Black Templars did not just defend, they counterattacked. Grimaldus led the charge personally, his skull-faced helm a vision of death, his Crozius Arcanum crushing orc skulls as he screamed prayers that were audible even over the din of battle. His brothers fought like men possessed, because in a very real sense, they were. Possessed by an absolute conviction that death in the Emperor's service wasn't a tragedy, but a triumph. The pivotal moment of the siege came during its third week. A colossal orc gargant, a walking fortress of scrap metal and crude, roaring weaponry, breached the Hive's primary gate, its shadow falling over the defenders like a death sentence. Panic spread through the militia. But Grimaldus gave an order that bordered on madness, a charge directly into the war machine's path, not to stop it. 100 Space Marines could not stop a god engine of that size, but to slow it, to distract it long enough for the Hive's macro cannons to find its range. 17 Black Templars died in that suicidal charge, torn apart by cannons and stomping feet. But they bought the time needed. The Gargant, crippled by artillery, fell. And in that moment, Hellsreach's terrified civilians began to understand what manner of warriors defended them. Grimaldus's relationship with the Hive's population evolved. He had initially viewed them with contempt, weak, inferior humans who would cower and flee rather than fight. But as the weeks of brutal attrition wore on, he saw something change. He saw civilians take up the fallen weapons of guardsmen and join the defense. He saw ordinary men and women throw themselves at orc mobs to buy seconds for a Space Marine counterattack. Grimaldus recognized something he hadn't expected. Faith wasn't unique to the Astartes. These people believed, too. Believed in the Emperor, believed in Hell's Reach, believed that standing against the Green Tide meant something, even if it meant certain death. The siege's climax came when the Temple of the Emperor Ascendant, Hell's Reach's most sacred structure, came under direct assault. Grimaldus made the temple his final redoubt. As his battle brothers fell one by one, as his ammunition ran dry, as his armor systems sparked and died, he continued fighting. He swung his Crozius until his arms screamed in protest, and when he was disarmed, he fought with his bare, ceramite gauntleted hands. He killed orcs until he physically could not lift his arms, collapsing under a pile of rubble as the temple finally fell. He was presumed dead, but he emerged 3 days later, walking from the ruins, carrying the temple's sacred banner. The greenskins who saw him coming, this one, lone, wounded Space Marine, simply fled. Not because they feared a single warrior, but because something about this particular warrior made their primitive psychic senses scream a warning of absolute, divine wrath. Grimaldus survived. 60 of his brothers did not. He was declared the hero of Hell's Reach, a title he flatly rejected. The true heroes, he insisted, were the dead. He was merely the one who had to live with the memory. The battle demonstrated to the wider Imperium what the Black Templars had always known: that faith, properly weaponized, could achieve what military calculation deemed impossible. The Inquisition exists to protect the Imperium from threats within: heresy, mutation, demonic corruption. Its agents possess absolute authority. They can condemn entire worlds to the cleansing fire of exterminatus. They can declare a Space Marine chapter, excommunicate traitorous, signing the death warrant for 1,000 of the Emperor's finest warriors. They answer to no one except the Emperor's own silent judgment. The Black Templars have made multiple Inquisitors simply disappear. This is not an officially acknowledged fact. The records do not exist. But within the cloistered circles of the Ordos, a quiet, chilling understanding has developed. Do not interfere with Black Templar operations unless absolutely necessary. And even then, reconsider. The tension between the Black Templars and the Inquisition is not a simple rivalry. It stems from two competing claims to absolute religious authority. The Inquisition enforces imperial doctrine as they interpret it from ancient texts and shadowed councils. The Black Templars enforce imperial doctrine as they believe it is delivered to them directly by the divine will of the Emperor. These interpretations frequently and violently conflict. The most dangerous flashpoint involves the Black Templars' pathological hatred of psychers. Inquisitorial doctrine holds that sanctioned psychers, properly tested, soul-bound to the Emperor, are vital imperial resources. Black Templar doctrine holds that every psyker is a walking wound in reality, a doorway for damnation. When an Inquisitor demands the use of a psyker, and a marshal responds with a threat of execution, diplomatic incidents follow. The case of Inquisitor Lord Vinculus serves as the ultimate cautionary tale. Vinculus, a Puritan of considerable reputation and unbending will, arrived to join the Black Templars' crusade against the alien Cacodominus. He brought with him a retinue of sanctioned psychers, whose abilities were essential for his investigation into the Xenos' mind-altering capabilities. High Marshal Bohemond, commanding the crusade from his flagship, refused to permit the psychers aboard his vessel. Vinculus, stunned by the defiance, invoked the full weight of inquisitorial authority. Bohemond, unmoved, invoked the sacred autonomy of his chapter. The standoff lasted for 3 days, the two vessels hanging in the void, radiating silent menace at one another. It ended when Vinculus's psychers began to break. They reported sensing something fundamentally wrong aboard the Black Templar flagship, a presence that shouldn't exist. It wasn't demonic, not chaotic, but it terrified them on a primal level. They spoke of a crushing weight, a pressure of pure, focused judgment so absolute it felt like a physical force. They felt a belief so concentrated it had become a power in its own right, one that viewed their very souls as an unforgivable contamination. Vinculus, seeing the genuine terror on the faces of his most powerful assets, quietly withdrew his demand and never spoke of the incident again. The Inquisition's reluctance to force a confrontation also stems from cold, practical calculus. The chapter's true size remains officially unknown, but is certainly vast. Their fleet strength is substantial. Their willingness to accept catastrophic casualties in pursuit of victory is documented across thousands of campaigns. To start a war with the Black Templars would be to commit resources the Imperium cannot spare. To fight a war they might not even win. More importantly, in most circumstances, the Black Templars are horrifically effective tools. Both organizations want heretics dead. Both want Xenos purged. Both want chaos defeated. Their methodology differs, but their objectives overlap enough that cooperation usually proves more practical than conflict. Individual inquisitors have learned to work with Black Templar marshals not by demanding obedience, but by appealing to their shared, bottomless hatred. An inquisitor who arrives proclaiming his authority will be ignored. An inquisitor who arrives offering validated intelligence on a nest of heretics will receive the most enthusiastic cooperation imaginable. The campaign of Marshal Draco against the dreaded host, a chaos warband that had eluded inquisitorial pursuit for decades, succeeded precisely because of this dynamic. Inquisitor Helios provided Draco with the warband's location, and then simply let him determine the methodology. The warband was annihilated to the last man. The methodology involved orbital bombardments that resulted in unacceptable civilian casualties on 3 Imperial worlds. Helios filed no complaints. The enemy was dead. The price was irrelevant. This brutal arrangement suits both parties. The Inquisition gains access to one of the Imperium's most effective and unstoppable fighting forces. The Black Templars gain legitimate targets for their holy, eternal crusade. As long as neither side examines the relationship too closely, a functional, if deeply precarious, détente prevails. It is a peace held together by mutual utility and the shared, unspoken recognition that a true conflict between them would serve only the ruinous powers. For 10,000 years, the Black Templars waged their eternal crusade with the absolute certainty that they alone understood the Emperor's divine will. They answered to no living primarch. They followed no external doctrine. Their faith was pure, their purpose unassailable, precisely because no higher authority existed to corrupt it. Then Robert Guillemot, author of the Codex Astartes they had so long rejected, returned from the dead and announced he was rebuilding the Space Marines. The introduction of Primaris Marines, larger, stronger, more advanced warriors created through Guillemot's authority, presented the Black Templars with their most severe crisis of faith since the chapter's founding. The Primaris represented everything the Templars instinctively distrusted: modification from an outside source, advancement through cold technology rather than earned devotion, and worst of all, a new generation of warriors who had not earned their place through the endless, bloody crucible of the crusade. High Marshal Helbrecht's initial reaction was one of cold fury. Across the void, encrypted communiques flared between crusade fleets as reports confirmed his deepest fears. He considered declaring the Primaris technology heretical, a blasphemous corruption of the Emperor's original perfect Astartes design. Several of his most veteran marshals advocated refusing the reinforcements entirely, arguing that to accept these new forged giants would be to compromise the chapter's spiritual purity, a stain upon 10 millennia of unwavering conviction. The counter-argument came from the one place Helbrecht could not ignore, his own reclusium. The chaplains, the grim keepers of the Black Templar faith, pointed out an uncomfortable, undeniable truth. Robert Guilliman was a Primarch, a son of the Emperor, flesh of his flesh. To reject his gifts, however unwelcome, could be interpreted as rejecting the Emperor's own bloodline. Could the Black Templars truly claim to serve the master of mankind while refusing aid from his own returned son? The theological paradox was a blade at the chapter's throat. The debate raged across crusade fleets for months, a war of doctrine fought with the same ferocity as any battlefield engagement. The eventual compromise revealed the core of Black Templar pragmatism that lies beneath their fanaticism. The Primaris Marines would be accepted, but only after undergoing the same brutal, soul-scarring apprentice process as any traditional initiate. No Primaris warrior would fight as a Black Templar until a veteran of the Long War had personally vouched for his faith, tested his resolve, and witnessed his willingness to die for the Emperor. The technology might come from Guilliman. The devotion would be forged by the Templars. Marshal Amalrich's crusade against the orcs of the Genna system provided the first test of these integrated forces. His new Primaris warriors, towering even above their Astartes brothers, initially faced a wall of silent skepticism from veteran sword brethren. These scarred, weary warriors questioned whether the newcomers, with their flawless armor and enhanced biology, could ever truly understand suffering, sacrifice, and the burning faith that sustained the chapter. The doubts ended during the siege of Genna's Gate. A breach in the main wall saw orc knobs pour through, a green tide of muscle and metal. Primaris intercessor Valdis, serving as an apprentice to a grizzled Castellan, found his squad cut off and his master slain. He held the breach, alone. For 16 consecutive hours, Valdis stood his ground, his bolter running dry before he drew his combat knife. He screamed the litanies of hate until his voice gave out, then continued in hoarse whispers, each kill a prayer. When relief finally arrived, they found him standing atop a mountain of orc dead, his armor shattered, his body broken. Valdis died of his wounds before reaching the apothecarian. His final whispered words were the chapter's eternal vow: no pity, no remorse, no fear. The integration of Primaris Marines has, against all expectation, strengthened the Black Templars. The new warriors' enhanced physiology allows them to sustain assaults that would have killed previous generations. Their fresh perspective, warriors who chose the Black Templars after learning of all other chapters, provides a powerful confirmation that the chapter's faith remains compelling. What remains undisputed is that Black Templars, whether Primaris or Firstborn, fight with identical fervor. When a Primaris warrior charges into enemy fire, screaming prayers to the God Emperor, when he kills and dies with the chapter's characteristic fury, questions about his origins become utterly irrelevant. Faith, the chapter has learned, transcends physiology. The Great Rift's emergence, a wound in reality stretching from the Eye of Terror to the galactic edge, should have been a catastrophe for the Black Templars. Their crusade fleets operated with decentralized autonomy across the entire Imperium. When the Cicatrix Maledictum tore the galaxy in two, roughly 40% of their active forces found themselves stranded on the dark side, cut off from communication, reinforcement, and the High Marshal's authority. The comforting, psychic glow of the Astronomicon was snuffed out, replaced by an oppressive, screaming darkness. High Marshal Helbrecht expected to lose those crusades. Isolated, outnumbered, and fighting in chaos-saturated space without any hope of support, survival seemed unlikely and victory impossible. He underestimated his brother's faith. The Crusade fleets trapped in what would become known as Imperium Nihilus didn't just survive, they thrived. Marshal Syriac, his forces caught deep within the Nihilus sector, launched offensive operations within weeks of the rift's opening. While other Imperial fleets fell back, desperately fortified key worlds, and prayed for a rescue that would never come, Syriac attacked. His reasoning, presented to his shocked Castilians, was characteristically Black Templar. The enemy expected paralysis, fear, and retreat. Therefore, unrelenting aggression would provide the greatest advantage. The Nihilus Crusade became a legend of terror among those who witnessed it. Syriac's warriors struck chaos-held worlds with a fury that horrified even veteran heretics who thought they had seen the limits of mortal hatred. They didn't simply defeat their enemies, they made examples of them. Captured traitor Marines weren't interrogated. They were executed in public rituals, their armor melted down into slag. Chaos shrines weren't just demolished, they were consecrated with the screaming cultists still chained inside. A message spread across the void of Nihilus, carried on the panicked whispers of refugees and the vox chatter of fleeing warbands. The Black Templars had come, and they were not interested in reclaiming territory. They were interested only in punishment. Psychologically, operating in Nihilus transformed the participating warriors. The constant, unfiltered exposure to the warp, the absence of the Emperor's light, the soul-crushing knowledge that rescue was impossible. These pressures would have broken lesser chapters, driving them to madness or despair. For the Black Templars, it was a crucible. They responded by intensifying their devotion. Prayer sessions, once held daily, were now held before and after every single combat action. Combat itself became more aggressive, more suicidal. Faith, always their defining characteristic, became their only anchor in a reality that bled at the edges. The reunion, when it finally came, was not what High Marshal Helbrecht expected. When Guilliman's Indomitus Crusade finally punched corridors of stable space through the rift, the Nihilist crusades that emerged were not diminished remnants, grateful for rescue. They were hardened, tested, and absolutely certain of their divine purpose in a way even their brothers in Sanctus could no longer comprehend. Marshal Syriac's first Vox transmission to Helbrecht wasn't a request for aid, but a battle report. His report concluded with a phrase that has since become enshrined in Black Templar doctrine. We were not trapped in Nihilus with chaos. Chaos was trapped in Nihilus with us. The Great Rift, paradoxically, has provided the Black Templars with exactly what their eternal crusade requires: an endless supply of enemies in desperate need of purging. While other chapters struggle with the logistical nightmare of a divided galaxy, the Black Templars have simply established crusades on both sides and continued their holy mission. Current operations span every major theater of the Indomitus era. In the Nachmund Gauntlet, Black Templar fleets wage constant war against chaos incursions. In the Pariah Nexus, they confront the soul-crushing silence of Necron technology with faith alone, suffering horrific casualties, but refusing to yield a single inch of sacred ground. The ultimate irony is not lost on the chapter's chaplains. For 10,000 years, Imperial authorities worried that the chapter's size represented a threat to stability. Now, with the Imperium facing extinction, those same authorities desperately encourage Black Templar expansion. High Marshal Helbrecht has obliged. Recruitment has intensified. New crusades launch monthly. The Eternal Crusade, born from one warrior's shame and fury, has become the Imperium's most vital weapon. The Black Templars intend to make the Emperor's dream of a purged galaxy a reality, or die to the last man trying. The Black Templars have never lost a crusade. This claim appears throughout their recruitment sermons and their official chapter histories. It is, by their own metrics, technically accurate. And it is also the most deeply misleading statement in the entire Imperium. The Black Templars have never lost a crusade because they simply redefine victory to match any outcome. A crusade that succeeds in killing its primary target but loses 90% of its warriors in the process is declared a glorious success. A crusade that purges a world of heresy but renders it an uninhabitable, irradiated rock has achieved its objective. A crusade that dies to the last Marine but delays an enemy advance by a mere 3 days has fulfilled its divine purpose. By these standards, victory is inevitable. Defeat is a theological impossibility, because admitting defeat would mean admitting that their faith, their sacrifice, and their entire existence had failed. The psychological cost of this unyielding mindset reveals itself in the cold, hollow spaces between battles. The unaugmented serfs who maintain the chapter's vessels and armories report that their Astartes masters display none of the personality variation common among other Space Marines. There is no humor. There are no hobbies, no interests beyond the meticulous study of warfare and the rote recitation of devotion. The Eternal Crusade has produced warriors of terrifying effectiveness, but it has stripped them of their humanity, leaving behind only consecrated weapons. The theological implications of their existence trouble even the most zealous authorities within the imperial cult. The Black Templars worship an emperor who explicitly, violently rejected the notion of godhood. They serve his Imperium through methods of fanatical slaughter that he forbade his original legions from using. They have become the very thing he never wanted his sons to be, and they consider this the highest, purest form of devotion. When Robert Guillemot, the returned Primarch, witnessed Black Templar operations firsthand, his recorded reaction captured this paradox perfectly. "My father would be horrified by what has been done in his name," he stated, "and yet he would recognize these warriors as precisely what humanity now needs to survive." This profound ambivalence defines the Black Templars' place in the modern Imperium. They are simultaneously the Emperor's truest servants and his greatest, most tragic disappointment. The final unspoken truth about the Black Templars is that they cannot exist in a peaceful galaxy. Their entire identity, their entire purpose, is built upon the foundation of having enemies to purge, heretics to punish, and holy wars to wage. If the Imperium were to ever achieve a state of lasting peace, the Black Templars would become purposeless. Their crusade must be eternal, because to end it would be to admit that devotion alone is not enough to save mankind. This creates a disturbing, parasitic possibility that their chaplains never discuss. The chapter benefits from the Imperium's suffering. Every new crisis produces more targets. Every fresh disaster justifies more crusades. The worse things get for humanity, the more essential the Black Templars become. The matte black armor, scarred by 1,000 worlds, stands as a monument to 10,000 years of fanaticism successfully weaponized. The warrior inside has no doubts, no questions, and no hesitation. He knows exactly what he is, an instrument of divine judgment, consecrated to a war without end. The winged skull on his chest represents both humanity's greatest hope and its most dangerous delusion, the belief that sufficient faith can overcome any obstacle, that raw devotion alone can save a civilization. On countless battlefields, the Black Templars have proven this to be true. They have also proven that faith without limit becomes indistinguishable from madness. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. The Black Templars would have it no other way. They are the final answer to the question of what happens when belief becomes absolute. No pity, no remorse, no fear.